Well, this little video is about Lackenby. There are in fact three Lackenbys, or there were three Lackenbys. There was North Lackenby, or sometimes called Low Lackenby, which is down by the river, and there was the original Lackenby where the Old Hall Farm is and the other farms, and then in 1881 South Lackenby was built. So this little video is about the three different Lackenbys.
This is from 1857, and here you can see Lazenby Whin is fox covered. This is a guide to everything else. This is Lackenby Station, and you can see there this Darlington 19 miles. Here is this pit for gypsum, which you can see on later maps, and down here there's also a brickyard. So this is where Low Lackenby was, next to the station, Lackenby Station. And this lane here is called Lackenby Lane, and you can still see it on, not this bit, but further north, further south, you can still see it on modern maps. And you can see it here, there is a little reservoir, which again you can see on maps of Low Lackenby from the late 1800s, early 1900s. And that again will give you an indication as to where Low Lackenby was built. You can see the railway there was just a single track, and it ran alongside the shore. This whole area here was the marshland of the River Tees. And in Lazenby this was called the Slems, this area here. Now it's all been reclaimed for this. And if you follow the railway along, and the Slems, you'll see that there is no South Gate. It hadn't yet been built, it wasn't built until the 1890s. And it comes along here to Cordham Junction. And one branch goes along what is called the Juba Road now to the centre of Redcar, where there used to be when I was a kid, that was a cinema called the Central. The railway had long since gone by then. You can still see evidence of this along the side of what was the golf course. You can see here, this is Cordham Bridge. This is Lock Park now. This is the line of the new railway round to Redcar Station. But the interesting thing here, in 1857, there's no Warrenby. There's no Warrenby now either. It's been built and gone in not much more than, well, 100 years perhaps. And there's no steelworks here. Teesside Steelworks, as it's now called, doesn't exist. That's just to look at the side of Nothing to do with Lackenby really, but while I've got the map out, it's just interesting to look at these things.
And this is called North Lackenby. Or, as it is here, Low Lackenby. And this was built alongside the railway between Middlesbrough and Redcar. And the interesting bit is this Darlington 18 milepost. And this was North Lackenby Station, or Lackenby Station as it was then. And then these are the houses at Low Lackenby. And there are 40 houses there. Another interesting thing are these things here, which were clay pits from when there used to be a brickworks down there. And you can see them on an older map of 1857. And as it says there, this is a later map. This is in 1919. The interesting thing is you can see Lazenby Wynn, which was a fox cupboard. And that appears on much later maps, so this will give you an indication as to where this was. And there you can see the Low Lackenby houses there. And there were 40 of them in 1890. And this whole area was, in the 1950s, Low Lackenby was demolished. About 1950. And the whole place disappeared under the development of the Dorman Longs, as it was, Lackenby Steelworks. Again, you can see this was Lackenby Station here. The buildings were still there in 1940, apparently. This is a photograph of Low Lackenby, which was down at the Trunk Road, where the Downies had their steelworks. The furnaces were built in 1871, and the houses were probably built at the same time. They were demolished in 1950. It also had a sort of tin sheet church, which I think was a church and a school combined. Like most of the expanding Eston, Grangetown, mining area, many hundreds of workers came from all over. It was a bit like the gold rush in many ways, and large numbers of people came from Ireland. So there was a big Roman Catholic population in the area.
This is the 1953 map, and you can see North Lackenby is still marked on it. This is where the station was. You can see here Lazenby Wynn, this fox cupboard, still existed in 1953. This whole area is now covered by Dorman Long or British Steel or whoever owns it now, some other company, Chorus. This is occupied by them. This is all that remains of the Downey's works, which were here. These allotment gardens are all that remains of Low Lackenby. All the rest of it has disappeared. And here you can see the outline of the road which goes down to Smith's Dock. Although in 1953 it hadn't been built, but was obviously in the planning stage. And the railway used to run along the shoreline. All this land here to the north has been reclaimed.
This is Lackenby as I remember it as a kid. There were two rows of houses here, back row and a front row. The back row was demolished, I think sometime in maybe around about in the 80s. Then there were the four farms down here. This was Frank's farm, Hare's farm, Gale's farm and Greenwell's farm. This was the last one. The others all packed in farming gradually as land was taken over. And there was a little cinder track ran all the way from Lazenby to Lackenby then. And across here you could walk to Eston. But of course they put Greystones Road in here. And this was Lazenby football field. It was called White Garth. It was quite a long walk from Lazenby. And there was a family called Little lived in here. Derek Little was the same age as me, which was a big dairy farm. And then Gale's, their farm was demolished, and Little's cottage was demolished, and Little's moved into Paddington Place in Lazenby. And this lane here was known as Lackenby Lane.
Lackenby, Western now. All Lackenby with the red pantile roofs behind, and this row of houses in the front. There were two rows of 24 houses. They were built by Messrs. Downey and Co. for their workers who worked in the furnaces down at Low Lackenby, which was demolished in the 50s. There was a little village down there, a few rows of houses down there. And then behind that little row of houses there is the monkey field. The story goes that two fellas took a monkey out there to kill it. I don't know why. But before they killed it, they shook hands with it. Would you believe? That was told to me by an old resident of down at the farms at Old Lackenby there.
As it says there, this is Old Lackenby in about 1905. This is Greenwell's farm. This is the old hall. This farm here is Frank's farm.
And this is Old Lackenby today, 2013. This is Old Hall Farm from the east. Unfortunately it's in shade. And this is where Gale's farmhouse used to stand, where that little fir tree is. And straight opposite, behind me, was where a little cottage used to be. Somebody nice and now is flying a Union Jim. Oh no, it's St. George. This will be the 60th anniversary of the coronation, I suspect. That's what it's all about. This is Old Hall Farm, 2013. Oh, massive chimney there. It does contain some wooden panelling from Elizabethan times, I understand. I've never actually been inside. The plinth there for the milk churns. And then behind that door was the cow buyer. It was a big dairy outfit in its time. This is the Greenwell family. I can remember living at Old Hall Farm in Lackenby. I think this is the grandfather, but I remember Mr. Greenwell and this lad Colin, who is he's slightly younger than I am. I don't know who the other fella is at all. And this is a typical farming scene. I think it was taken at Lackenby as well. Over that elevator, and I think it's hay. I think they're stacking hay. That building there was Hare's farm. There's two lads, they're twins. I think they're a year younger than me. Now with this huge substation behind it. But still quite quiet. This was all Lackenby in about 1950. This was where Littles lived. He was the dairyman for Greenwells. And this is Gale's farm. These two were knocked down, or I'm thinking the 1960s, if not before. Well, certainly Little's cottage was. Gale's maybe lasted a while after that. They've been knocked down. This is Old Hall Farm, which is where Greenwells lived, and Bullocks live there now. They moved up from Thorntree Farm when Thorntree Farm was taken over to build Wilton ICI. And this is their farm. This was a cow buyer here. This farm here was Frank's farm. A family called Mayer lived in there, Danny Mayer. And this was Hare's farm, which you just can't quite see. So these are all still here. This is Crow Lane, and these here are walnut trees. There's some walnut. They used to produce these dreadful little bitter walnuts, I remember. We used to pretend we liked them, but they're awful. And you can just see there the back row, which was demolished, I would think around about the 1980s. And this is the infamous monkey field, as mentioned earlier. And then this was the track that led down to Lazenby, and you carried on up there under Western and Grangetown. And this is Lackenby, Western now. All Lackenby with the red pantile roofs behind, and this row of housing. This is Crow Lane, and these here are walnut trees. There's some walnut. They used to produce these dreadful little bitter walnuts, I remember. We used to pretend we liked them, but they're awful. And you can just see there the back row, which was demolished, I would think around about the 1980s. And this is the infamous monkey field, as mentioned earlier. And then this was the track that led down to Lazenby, and you carried on up there under Western and Grangetown.
This is South Lackenby, which stands on the A174 now. If you look on the 1853 map, there's no evidence of these at all. They were built by a company called Fishwick and Thwaites for Downies. Downies were an iron company. They had 3 furnaces down at Low Lackenby or North Lackenby. And these houses were finished in 1881. And very smart they look too, all very uniform, very nice. So they weren't miners' cottages as such, they were for the employees of Downey. So if you worked at Downey Steelworks or Ironworks as they were called, then you might be allocated one of these houses, or you might be allocated one of the houses down at North Lackenby, down towards the river.
And this is a nice smart row of houses at Lackenby in about 1905, and it's still there, although there was a row behind this which has been demolished. Halfway along this row in my time was a little shop run by a family called Cravens. This is South Lackenby or New Lackenby in 2013. I'm not sure it's so much of an improvement